Hi everyone, I am Payal and I welcome everyone in my today's class, which is going to be on the 5th chapter of your economic survey. So basically we are done with the 4 chapters and today we'll see that what is there in your chapter 5th of your economic survey. So you can see on your screen that your 5th chapter is related to your medium term outlook, deregulation drives growth. So in economics, it's generally talking about the meaning of the medium term outlook. So basically we are considering this thing that what can be our, we are basically doing the projection of our, GDP growth in the coming years. So that is what is related to your medium term outlook. Now what is specifically written here? We are specifically, your survey specifically has said that deregulation drives the growth here. Now deregulation means what? Regulation word is there. Regulation means that you are regulating someone. Okay, you have regulation over the resources. You have a regulation of your plan. Your plan is just regulated by you. You are planning, or you are regulating your entire day. So similarly, this is particular word that is related to the regulations of the government. That when we consider this thing that the government has high regulations in a particular company. Deregulation means that we are pulling the most of the regulations of the government out of that company, or just removing the regulations, or just removing the power that government has over that company. So deregulation means कि we are doing what, कि जो हमारी government की जो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जो power है या फिर जो activities हैं that are involved in that particular company, or that are just related to the resources of that particular company, we are trying to reduce that or to remove that. That is completely your deregulation. Now why is it written here that deregulation leads to growth? How if we are removing the power, or I would say the involvedness of the, I would say the involvement of the, I would say the involvement of the government in a particular company, how it will lead to growth? So see how it is related to growth. So basically when government regulations increase over the period of time, that means every private company who's coming from outside, or any of the investment that coming from the any of the private company, or you can say any of the private investment that is coming from outside in our India, that particular company first has to take the permission from the government of India. Then that particular company or businessman has to do rest of the things, formalities that are related to that particular step that has been taken while doing investment in opening any of the businesses here. So we are continuously saying that when things will be deregulated ना, so वो जो private individual है उसको उतनी ज़्यादा formalities नहीं करनी पड़ेंगे, because while doing formalities on thinking of the formalities only, private groups take their step back कि इतनी सारी formalities कौन करेगा. And if we are included, or if we enroll ourselves in the private companies, so of course we'll be stuck anywhere. We'll be stuck anywhere if we are doing, if we'll have any of the mistake, of course हमें जो है वो जो कोर्ट कचहरी के चक्कर है हमें लगाने पड़ेंगे. So just to I would say just to not to get in this situation, private जो companies हैं, they take a step back and they think कि why to go in this particular sector, rather we have number of opportunities with us in the rest of the world. So this is what they think. And similarly what is written here, that deregulation will lead to growth here. If we start reducing regulations, if we put less of the regulations on the private companies, then private businesses and private investments will take more interest in our sectors also. That is what is entirely we'll discuss in this particular chapter here. So you can see that it suggests the policy responses with a special emphasis on the importance of the domestic growth levers and your shedding of the regulatory compliance burden. It will enhance your economic freedom of individuals, small businesses, which is arguably the most important policy priority to define and bolster the India's medium term growth prospects. So of course, if I talk about big industries, big nations, services that also contribute to the development or increase in the number of GDP, but similarly your small sectors, your I would say your domestic industrialists, they also contribute to it, and it is very important to take care of their interest also. It is very important to take care of the interest of your small and small industrialists as well. So this is what is shown here. Now before we move on, one thing that I want to clarify here, that this chapter again consists of a lot of data. So we'll read that data first. Of course I too have to see that what is it. After that I'll analyze the situation for you. I'll just tell you that what is data saying, but we'll read the data parallelly, and whatever the concepts whatever the concepts are there, I'll try to decode that. We'll along with you people along with me will decode that, and we'll see that what is all data saying. So first is your India's growth aspirations and global influence. One consists of your growth target for the Viksit Bharat. So we have a target of बिकमिंग अ विकसित भारत बाय 2047. ठीक है, आत्मनिर्भर भारत बनना है, विकसित भारत बनना है. हम जो है वी शुड नॉट बी entirely डिपेंडेंट ऑन द रेस्ट ऑफ द नेशन फॉर द import of goods and services. Rather than we should do this thing that we should start doing import substitution, as in that whatever you are importing from the rest of the nation, start producing that in your own country, so that you can also become very much worth of selling it to the other nations. So your exports will also be increased. Of course your trade deficit will also be removed, and you can go in surplus as well. So of course if that is the case, you can move on to the growth. So India aims for 8% growth at constant prices to achieve its economic aspirations by centenary of the independence, and the global political and economic environment will impact the India's growth trajectory. Next, if I talk about the IMF's projection here, so World Economic Outlook, WEO अक्टूबर 20 फाइनेंशियल ईयर 2025 सेज कि जो हमारी इंडिया की जीडीपी ग्रोथ प्रोजेक्शंस है वो क्या है, दैट IMF इज प्रोजेक्टिंग दैट वी कैन स्टैंड एट USD $5 trillion economy by financial year 2028. Similarly, we can have we'll be USD 6.307 trillion economy by the financial year 2030. And if I talk about nominal GDP growth, now there are two bifurcations here. Okay, I have done this in my static portion while covering my national income. You have two types of your GDPs. One is your nominal, and other one is your real. Nominal is a hazy one. Nominal doesn't show you the exact data. But if I talk, or if I consider real GDP, that shows you an exact data. So that is the case here. Now past 30 years, if I talk about financial year 1990, this is something very hazy. So all right, leaving it, higher expected growth in the next financial next 5 years is expected. Nominal GDP growth in the Indian rupee terms is 12.4% CAGR and 10.7% CAGR financial year 2025 से लेके 2030 तक it is projected here. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट इफ आई टॉक अबाउट एक्सचेंज रेट एंड कैपिटल अकाउंट डेफिसिट, सो IMF इज प्रोजेक्टिंग कि हमारे पास जो है एक माइल्ड सा हमें जो रुपी डेप्रिसिएशन वो देखने को मिलेगा बाय 0.5% ओनली एनुअल डेप्रिसिएशन, दैट इज फॉर द फाइनेंशियल ईयर 2025 से लेके 30 तक. इफ आई कंपेयर इट विद व्हाट योर 3.3% per annum, indicates strong economic potential, and investment is very you can see an attractiveness in the investment here. Similarly, if I talk about current account deficit, current account deficit में क्या होगा, we will see and expected to rise gradually to 2.2% of GDP by financial year 2030. Now we'll talk about growth, domestic growth projections. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation says what, that first advance estimates financial year 25 will be 6.4% of the real GDP growth. फाइनेंशियल ईयर 26 ग्रोथ प्रोजेक्शंस क्या है, 6.3% से लेके 6.8% तक जो ग्रोथ हमें देखने को मिल सकती है. IMF जो कांस्टेंट प्राइस ग्रोथ प्रोजेक्शन है दैट इज 6.5% एनुअली. Now we'll see key challenges and the policy focus areas. So one is your global and global economic and your political factors. So these are saying कि कौन-कौन से ऐसे factors and what are the key challenges that can lead or that can become an obstacle in the achievement of our projections, and growth. So one is your geopolitical tensions, and another one is your economic areas as well. You have, of course, if I talk about the political challenges and political factors that are contributing here, one that contributes majorly is your geopolitical tensions. You have lot of chaos going in between the two and the rest of the countries among various nations. That is directly I would say causing effect on our global supply chain and your inflation, global inflation as well. So this is one of the factors. Now we'll see the first one is geo-economic fragmentation. Geo-economic fragmentation as in that we are getting fragmented. There is an increase in the fragmentation that is just because of the geopolitical tensions and rest of the factors as well. So this is what is known as geo-economic fragmentation and its effect on the global growth. China की जो manufacturing है and the strategic dominance that is impacting your global markets. Similarly, global energy transition changes with the dependency on the China-made goods. Similarly, if I talk about India's domestic policy priorities, then it is to strengthen your domestic growth. It delivers amidst your global uncertainty, enhancing your economic freedoms for businesses and individuals, systematic deregulation to boost your medium term growth. So see, here we are specifically focusing on the deregulation, and if you focus on, or if you are regularly following PIB, so you could have seen that few days back we had one of the steps that had been taken by the government of India, in which it is saying okay, to increase the entrepreneurship in India, we need to deregularize our economy. We need to deregularize our following sector so that they can, private players can come in our market just tension free, and they can also start, they can also start working or investing in our particular sector, in our sectors. Okay, these are the key challenges here. Now, policy recommendations for the sustaining growth. One is that you should entirely focus on encouraging your innovation, your investment, your technology. After you start integrating a lot of technology in your particular sectors, for example, you have energy sector, you have agricultural sector, you have EV system. The more you put your money into infrastructure, into the adoption of technology and your innovation, the more are the chances that you will start growing in the coming future. Similarly, you have reducing your regulatory bottlenecks to improve your productivity. Again, they are using this word that regulations should be should move towards the deregulation. You should not put a lot of interference in the working of the private players. They also get hesitated out of it. They also get fed up out of it, and no one knows they will take a step back, and your economy will be suffered here. Similarly, ensuring your energy transition goals with the reduction, or you can say with the reduced dependence on China, maintaining a stable macroeconomic environmental to take or to attract the investments here. Now you can see the chart here, GDP at the current prices by financial year 2030 we are expecting it to 6.3 USD trillion. Exchange rate जो है 30 तक कितना हो जाएगा 85.6 something जो है वो हो जाएगा. Now we are talking about the geo-economic fragmentation. This time may be different. Now how it is being said. So now we will talk about the Keynes perspective. This is one of the economists. ठीक है, ये जो है वो बहुत बड़े इकोनॉमिस्ट थे हमारे 20th century के. So what was his perspective about the globalization, about the early 20th century globalization? So John Maynard Keynes जो थे, he described the London's early 20th century economy as highly interconnected with the global system. Now Londoners could order the products from around the world with ease, invest globally without exertion. The system was disrupted by this militarism and your imperialism and your monopolistic restrictions. Now this is what are the opinions, were the opinions of the John Maynard Keynes. Now hyper-globalization of the recent decades. So similarly, if I talk about the Keynes time, the world experienced rapid global integration in recent decades. Key drivers of the globalization are what? One is your technological advancement, capital goods, services, people who are moving freely across the borders. Outcomes of economic integration, we are integrating with the rest of the economies. What are its outcomes basically? So of course it has positive and negative outcomes both, but what is written here particularly in this survey is that it boosts the productivity and the living standard of people. Of course our living standard has also very improved, our living standard has improved, but somewhere or another we have forgotten our own culture. We are continuously adopting the styling sense, the thinking sense of the foreigners, and we are keeping or we are lacking behind in the adoption. We feel shame if we we wear or we go for our traditional, I would say, thinking, or if I talk about attire even. So people of India have started getting ashamed out of it. Why? Because we are continuously towards the adoption of the Western culture. But this is better. This is also good that we are adopting the culture of the, I would say, the Western culture, the culture of the rest of the nation. But we should not basically we should not forget about our culture and tradition as well. So adoption is good, that will increase your level of the standard of level, or I would say your standard of living, but you have to take care of your own traditions as well. Similarly, tripled global GDP is there, lifted your 1.3 billion people out of the extreme poverty. This is what is written here. Now, geo-economic fragmentation, a modern challenge. Now, how is this a challenge today? So the world today faces a new wave of fragmentation with the following factors. Okay, so they are saying that you will see that there is a lot of fragmentation among various countries, but what are the factors that are contributing here, and what is whatever the factors that are contributing in today's economy, these are very modern in nature. So one is your trade restrictions and your protectionism. Of course, पहले की अगर मैं बात करूं, so we were continuously towards the opening of our economy. ठीक है, we were continuously towards the opening of our economy. We were continuously towards this thing. We were continuously towards the inclination of the adoption of globalization, just to make sure this thing कि whatever whatever we don't have, we should get it from the rest of the nations, and what they don't have, they will get from us. So we were in this idea, but now is the time that we are focusing on the protectionism policies, because I would say the involvement of the foreign countries is so much now, it is so much that we need to protect our domestic producers as well. So is the reason that we are continuously towards the protectionism policies and your trade restrictions as well. And next, geopolitical tensions, that is also there. Technological decoupling and your monopolies, okay, that have taken, that have suppressed the rest of the markets. Similarly, if I talk about the severity of current GEF, that is potentially more severe than early 20th century disruptions. नेक्स्ट यू हैव की स्टैटिस्टिक्स ऑन ग्लोबलाइजेशन 1980 से लेके प्रेजेंट तक क्या सिचुएशन है. सो ग्लोबल ट्रेड ग्रोथ जो है 1980s में कैसी थी, ग्लोबल ट्रेड जो है वो दैट वाज जस्ट 39% ऑफ द वर्ल्ड जीडीपी. नाउ इन 2012 इट इंक्रीज टू 60% ऑफ द वर्ल्ड जीडीपी. सिमिलरली इफ आई टॉक अबाउट एफडीआई, देन दैट इज द सिचुएशन ऑफ 1980s was that global FDI inflows were just USD 54 billion, and if I talk about 2019, they rose up to your USD 1.5 trillion. Similarly, you have economic growth and poverty reduction. The global economic expansion 1980s में कैसे थे, USD 11 trillion, and 2022 तक कैसे हो गए, USD 100 trillion nominal terms में. Similarly, you have extreme poverty reduction as well. 1981 में situation कैसी थी, it was just 42% of the world population, and 2019 में it has been dropped down to 8.4%. that has led to growth in China and India. ठीक है, so the situation is getting better according to the survey here. Now key takeaways and the future considerations. So hyper globalization जो है it has significantly improved the global prosperity. Emerging geo-economic जो fragmentation है, it is strengthening or it is threatening your economic stability, and there is a need for policy responses to take or to manage the risk and the sustainable growth. Next, you have your global population, urbanization, and your geopolitical, geo-economic fragmentation. So one is, we are here talking about the global population and urbanization trends. That is your population growth. हमारी जो 1980 से लेके 1922 तक कितनी थी? So similarly, you can see 1980 में थी, that was 4.4 billion. Similarly, by 2022, it has been reached out to 8 billion almost. It has been doubled. Key impact क्या है? अब now. See, this is a grave solution. Okay, this is a grave problem that has given rise to each and every problem. If your pollution is getting, if your population is rising rapidly, it means you need more resources to meet with the demands of the growing population. That is very I would say that is almost impossible, because we do not have that much of resources. We have resources, but we have limited in manner. Of course, we have to make judicious use of resources. We have to ensure this thing that the resources are getting available for the future generation also, and to ensure that you have today you have to use judicious use of our resources. So when this problem is getting is taking place, of course it will lead to number of rest of the problems as well, as in the problem of growth, the problem of demand, the problem of I would say you can see that there the demand and supply is not meeting. There is an imbalance in the your demand and your supply, that will give rise to inflation problems and the rest of the problems that are also there. Of course, you will see that there is a rise in the social issues, there is a rise in economic issues also. So rise in demand, your economic activity, connectivity will also be hampered here. Urbanization growth 1980 से लेके 1922 तक की सिचुएशन कैसी थी? 1980 में it was 39% of the population lived in cities. 2022 तक कैसे हुआ? 57% जो है of the urban population, of the population started living in the cities, and urbanization is just increasing over the period of time. Now what is its key impact? कि economic integration जो है वो बढ़ रही है, जो infrastructure expansion है वो हो रहा है, and productivity growth is also increasing over the period of time. Now transitioning from globalization to fragmentation. ठीक है, how it has happened? In the prior time, we were just focused on the globalization, on the just adoption of globalization. We were very much sure about this thing कि अगर हम globalize हो जाएंगे, so our economy will improve or bring development in the coming period of time. But now is the case that we are towards the fragmentation, as in that our rest of the economies have got unstable. Our rest of the economies have got unstable, and we are more focused towards the betterment of our economy only. That is the reason you can see that there is a lot of fragmentation that is going on. Okay. Now in the past decade, globalization fueled economic integration and growth. In the next 2 decades, it is likely to see economic fragmentation instead. Now geopolitical fragmentation की अगर मैं बात करूँ, so policy जो driven reversal है of economic integration that is there. Strategic consideration that has that has given drive to your fragmentation is your trade, capital inflows, capital flows, that includes your investment restrictions, and your migrations, that there is a tightening of the border controls as well. And similarly, if I talk about trades, you have you will see that there are a lot of protectionism policies, there are a lot of obstructions that continuously government is putting, so that we can save interest of our domestic industrialists, and we can save our own economy prior to taking care of the interest of the rest of the economy. So our entire focus has now shifted onto our economy. Now what are the challenges from the hyper globalization? So economic integration lead to global competition and the industry shift. Some workers and sectors were left behind, increasing the discontent. Next, you have growing geopolitical tension and the new economic blocks. So re-emergence of Cold War style has been developed here. So you can see nations that are grouping into 2 economic and political blocks. Okay, we all know that continuously Israel Hamas war है, हमारी Russia Ukraine war है. So they are continuously the tensions are continuously being there. And if I talk about the I would say the situation that is continuously giving rise to various problems. Of course, there is a disruption in the global supply chain, and again this is leading to increase in the food prices. Of course, if the supply is getting disrupted, your demand will also be suffered here. So that is all we are watching in the today's case. Major issues that are driving fragmentation are your trade disputes, technological standard competition, security concerns hai, Western imposed one size fits all policies on emission, labor and social standards are also there. Now what can be its implications? Now we have a lot of implications here. अगर कोल्ड वॉर चल रही है या फिर वॉर चल रही है, सो आई ऑलरेडी टोल्ड यू हमें इन्फ्लेशन जैसी प्रॉब्लम्स देखने को मिलेंगी. ठीक है, अब कहीं ना कहीं जो कंट्रीज हैं दे विल बी फ्रैगमेंटेड कि हम जो है इस पर्टिकुलर कंट्री की साइड है, हम जो है वो इस पर्टिकुलर कंट्री की साइड है. सो इन्वेस्टमेंट विल ऑल्सो बी सफर्ड. ठीक है, इफ यू आर गेटिंग रिसोर्सेज फ्रॉम वन नेशन दैट विल ऑल्सो बी सफर्ड. सो डिस्ट्रप्शन इन द ग्लोबल ट्रेड, इन्वेस्टमेंट फ्लोज में डिस्ट्रप्शन आएगी. Reduction in the international cooperation affecting your technological progress, increase in the economic uncertainty and volatility also. Now what can be the final takeaway? So globalization drove immense of the economic progress, but rising geopolitical fragmentation threatens the coming future. So if I talk about the coming future, your fragmentation, your geo-economic fragmentation is one of the problems that is continuously, economists are worried about it. Policy interventions will be crucial to mitigate your risk and sustain your economic expansion as well. Now we'll talk about growth implications of geo-economic fragmentation. Now what are the growth implications? ठीक है, सबसे पहले we read that what are the key factors that are contributing to this geo-economic fragmentation. One is your trade. ठीक है, we are putting lot of protectionism and we are putting lot of obstructions in the trade. That is one of the factors. Similarly, we have problem in the FDIs also. Okay, there is an increasing restrictions in the FDI, and if I talk about the migration, so that is also getting problematic. जो हमारे borders हैं उनके ऊपर इतने restrictions डाली जा रही हैं कि जो हमारा migration होता था that is becoming tougher here. Similarly, you have technology transfer and knowledge diffusion that is declining over the period of time. Now we'll talk about the impact on the global trade. So you can see जो हमारा trade restrictive measures हैं, 169 new trade restrictions have been imposed between the period of year 2023 October month to 2024 October month. USD 887.7 billion worth of trade is getting affected. Comparison अगर मैं करूँ 2022 से लेके 2033 तक, so you can see trade restrictions have affected USD 337.1 billion, which is a big number again. Now, increase in the $500 billion in the trade restrictions within a year. World Trade Organization की data की बात करूँ, so there is a sharp rise in trade restrictive measures globally. IMF insights की बात करूँ on the trade fragmentation, so the IMF is continuously saying that there is a period of global Cold War and era versus the present trade dependency. What can be the solution? What can be the situation here? So similarly, if I talk about 1950s, that was a Cold War start. Goods trade to GDP ratio was just 16%, and if I compare it with 2024, so you can see that goods trade to GDP is 45% here. Now key impact क्या है कि less trade क्या है? If we have less trade, that will be equal to less knowledge diffusion. Similarly, जो FDI fragmentation है, it has reduced your economic integration as well. Now, what can be its impact on FDI? How it has impacted your investment as well? So, FDI flows are increasingly concentrated among the geopolitically aligned nations. Now, I have told you कि जो हमारी FDI है, फिर जो हमारा जो investment आ रही है हमारी country में, फिर किसी भी country में investment आ रही है, that is also getting affected, है ना? अब वहाँ पे जो है geopolitical tensions के कारण it is directly putting impact on the your investment. Emerging markets की अगर मैं बात करूँ या फिर developing economies की बात करूँ, so they have face heightened restrictions from your major FDI sources. Friendshoring and reshoring lead to FDI reallocation, causing a vulnerability in the emerging economies. Output losses due to restricted capital inflows. Estimated global output loss due to the trade fragmentation. So you can say जो range है of impact, that is according to the IMF estimates. You can see 0%, 0.2% of GDP is there, up to 7% of GDP that is related to your high fragmentation, high cost adjustment scenario. Impact क्या है हमारे technological decoupling का? So you can see output loss could rise to 8 से लेके 12% of GDP in some countries, and overall effect क्या है कि हमारी जो global economy है उसमें हमें slow down जो है वो देखने को मिल सकता है. जो global हमारा जो capital जो है it seeks stability, but we can see that there is a fumbleness somewhere. Now higher growth economies we are also. Now what can be the takeaways here? So सबसे पहले तो जो हमारा trade है और जो हमारे FDI restrictions है, they should rise sharply. Emerging markets and जो developing economies हैं, they face the biggest risk from FDI fragmentation. जो potential global GDP loss है that range from 0.2% to 12% depending on the severity of fragmentation. Policy makers must focus on ensuring sustainability growth to attract your global capital. Now we'll see that what is the case of the global the elephant and the dragon in the room. So now we'll see the case of global trade and investment restrictions that have been between the 2022 से लेके 2024 तक. So you can see overall 24,000 जो new trade है and जो investment restrictions है, हमें इसके बीच के जो period है हमें यहाँ पे देखने को मिले. अब इसका impact क्या पड़ेगा? Global trade growth के ऊपर impact पड़ेगा, ठीक है? It can be slow down. Signs of secular stagnation emerging in the global economy can also be seen, and revaluation of the traditional economic principles and practices due to the changing global dynamics. Now China's strategic economic dominance. Now we talked about global supply chains. ठीक है, China का role क्या है? So it controls key areas that are critical for the global manufacturing. That is the reason that we are continuously worried about that thing कि हमें जो है वो continuously rely करना पड़ेगा किसके ऊपर? Chinese economy के ऊपर. And if we want to shift towards the clean energy, the if particularly talking about the China, it is rich in it, and we do not want this thing to be completely relied on China only. We want something that we should be able to do. Leverages competition and economic policy to dominate the strategic industries. Now we'll see the situation of China. You can see here दैट, ठीक है, जो हमारा 2000 का पीरियड था दैट वाज कंट्रीब्यूटिंग 6%, 2024 से आते आते जो एस्टिमेट है वो कितना लगाया गया था, 35 से लेके 40% तक का एस्टिमेट लगाया गया था, एंड प्रोजेक्शन जो है वो 2030 तक कितनी है, 45% की है। नाउ हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव की अगर मैं बात करूँ, सो दिस लेवल ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग डोमिनेंस हैज ओनली बीन सीन ट्वाइस बिफोर। जब यूके में आया था, जब हमने इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन देखी थी यूके में, तब ये चीज़ जो है हमें देखने को मिली थी, जो हमारा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग डोमिनेंस है। एंड यूएस आफ्टर द वर्ल्ड वॉर 2, चाइना मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एंड रिसोर्स कंट्रोल की अगर मैं बात करूँ, सो इट हैज इंपैक्टेड मेनी ऑफ द सेक्टर्स। वन इज ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर, स्पेशली योर ईवीज, माइनिंग एंड रिफाइनिंग ऑफ क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स दैट इंक्लूड्स योर सच मिनरल्स, एंड क्लीन एनर्जी इक्विपमेंट एंड टेक्नोलॉजी। अब इसका इफेक्ट क्या है कि सबसे पहले तो इसने जो है अपनी डोमिनेंस क्रिएट करके रखी है मार्केट में, ठीक है, डिस्ट्रप्शन इन द लॉन्ग स्टैंडिंग ऑटो इंडस्ट्री लीडर्स एंड डोमिनेंस इन द ग्लोबल critical mineral supply chain that is creating dependencies on the Chinese economy only. Now the future of the global manufacturing that includes your geopolitical shift and economic reset. So dominance जो है China की is reshaping the global supply chain dynamics. The era of outsourcing manufacturing to China is poised for a reset, and potential risk for other economies due to Chinese economic and political leverages are there. Now you can see the graph here. Here we are talking about proliferation and of trade and investment restrictions. You can see by the, if I talk about 2024, so it has been reached out to, जो हमारे नए restrictions and new restrictions that are your ranging between your 33,000 and 3,390. Similarly, this shows your non-trade, national security, geopolitical concerns and rest of the things. Now we have global merchandise trade volume growth. So you can see here it is above 0. It is above 0, but somewhere below 5 here, which is your 5%. Now here it is about the industrial production volume growth in advanced economies. So you can see it is just on the bar that is there. Now we'll talk about, now you will not be able to see this. I'll share the document with you and you can just analyze it. Now we have climate transition, China and geopolitics. One, you have climate change, a global economic risk. So one, we all know that we are continuously towards the global warming, ठीक है, global warming के कारण हमारे GDP में भी बहुत ज़्यादा change है वो देखने को मिल रहा है. You can see here, if there is 1% rise in the temperature, that leads to reduction of 10% of GDP here, ठीक है, so that is a big number. And continuously we see that every year we consider that particular year as the hottest year. So that means what? We are continuously towards the increase in the rise of in the increase of the global warming. That is what we are watching. So that is also creating problem for our economies as well. So 50% of the global greenhouse gas emission that comes from China, the US and the EU and the G7 economies. Net zero targets for major economies set for 2050, but trade conflicts could disrupt your green energy transition. Now China's dominance in the renewable energy supply chain. So you can see that जो solar voltaic जो हमारे manufacturing है, in China ने कितना invest करके रखा है, $50 billion in new PV capacity, that is 10 I would say 10 your 10 folds more than Europe. And similarly China का जो share है in the solar panel production, that has exceeded 80% at all stages. China का जो control है, that is 10 on the world top solar PV equipment suppliers. Wind energy की अगर बात करो, so 60% of the global wind installed capacity comes from China only. Battery manufacturing की बात करो, so 80% of the global battery manufacturing capacity is in China only. 2022 में China ने invest करा था $546 billion in solar, wind, EVs and batteries, and $321 billion by the US and European Union combined. So $321 billion US and European Union ने combined किए थे. But if I talk about China, so it solely has done $546 billion. That is a big number. China's control of the critical minerals and EV supply chain. So lithium iron batteries की बात करूँ, so यहाँ पे भी इसकी dominance है. China possesses 65% of the global nickel output, 68% of global cobalt your output, 60% of the global lithium output as well. Now 90% of the rare earth minerals processing happens in China only. EV जो industry risks हैं, EVs require 6-fold more minerals than conventional cars, that is there, and it is fulfilling the gap. 24 out of 33 critical minerals of India's economy are at high risk of supply disruption, and China is taking benefit of it. Lithium ion battery demand जो है, it is expected to grow at 23% CAGR by 2030, and non-viable alternate battery technologies yet reinforcing China's growth. ठीक है. नाउ यू हैव इंडिया चैलेंज स्ट्रैटेजीज फॉर द एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन. सो इंडिया का जो नेट जीरो टारगेट है दैट इज बाय 2070, बट जो की इनिशिएटिव जो हमारी गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा लिए गए हैं टू बूस्ट योर ईवी एंड योर रीन्यूएबल एनर्जी सेक्टर, दीज आर दे. ठीक है, व्हाट इज बीइंग मेंशन्ड इन द सर्वे. बट इफ यू कंटिन्यूसली सी तो हर दिन हर हफ्ते पीआईबी में कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा आता है दैट इन विच गवर्नमेंट इज फोकसिंग ऑन द अडॉप्शन ऑफ ईवी इन मेकिंग योर ईवी बेटर. कभी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बेटरमेंट की बात हो रही है, चार्जिंग पॉइंट्स इंस्टॉल करने के लिए. कभी वी आर फोकसिंग ऑन दी adoption of more EV buses to just lead to decrease in the pollution. Urbanization तो है ही है ताकि हम pollution को भी reduce कर सके. So that is what continuously government is doing. So FAME India scheme is there, PLI scheme for auto components is there, SPM EPCI is also there, PLI scheme for advanced chemistry cell. Manufacturing is also there, and Khanji Bidesh India Limited for securing critical minerals also there. Current जो import dependence है वो कितनी है? India imports 75% of the lithium ion batteries from China. Net zero domestic production capacity for polysilicon ingots and your wafers. Now the risk of the geopolitical fragmentation on the energy transition. Now what is that? IMF projection के according अगर जो trade है हमारे जो critical minerals का if it is disrupted, जो हमारा investment है in renewable and EVs could drop by 30% by 2030. Multilateral institutions की बात करो, so they are also struggling, making energy security at a pressing concern here. Now what is the roadmap for the India's self-reliance in energy transition? So one is that it will boost your domestic growth battery. If I specifically talk about research and development, so focus on the sodium ion and solid state battery technologies is very important. Expansion in the investment in the battery recycling infrastructure is also very important. Development of the technology transfer agreements with the other countries for critical minerals is also very important. And we need to completely focus on this thing कि जो हमारा public transportation है ना उसमें भी हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा क्या करें, जो हमारा EV है उसकी adoption करें. ठीक है. Now here you can see the chart that is specifically telling you about the growth that is accounting with the climate change. This chart specifically shows you about the India's installed capacity mix. Okay, now a comparison has been done between your 2022 and 2030. Change in the share of power generation here, so you can see the diagram here. This diagram shows you about the solar PV manufacturing by the countries and region by 2010. So you can see, different color shows different economies here. So you can see now solar PV capacity country and region by 2021. So comparison has been made here. You can see and just compare it. Now we'll see the implications for the India's growth prospects. So vision for India's growth. Viksit Bharat 2047 का aim क्या है कि हमें अपने nation को developed बनाना है by 2047. Now to achieve this, इंडिया को जो है वो एक सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ चाहिए बाय 18% ऑफ द इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ रेट एट द लास्ट डेकेड. नाउ इफ आई टॉक अबाउट इन्वेस्टमेंट, इट मस्ट राइज टू 35% ऑफ द जीडीपी. की ग्रोथ इनिशिएटिव्स या फिर एरियाज की बात करूँ, सो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर में ग्रोथ चाहिए, एआई में ग्रोथ चाहिए, रोबोटिक्स में ग्रोथ चाहिए, टेक्नोलॉजी में ग्रोथ चाहिए, बायोटेक्नोलॉजी में ग्रोथ चाहिए एंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में ग्रोथ चाहिए. नाउ व्हाट इज आवर एम्प्लॉयमेंट टारगेट? सो यू कैन सी 78.5 lakh is our employable I would say employability target that is creating new farm jobs annually till 2030. Similarly, if I talk about education target, that is 100% literacy. ठीक है. Now we will talk about the structural reforms in the last decade. So GST की बात करो, so it has created a single national market, boosted your revenue and increased your ease of doing business. Now GST has made things very go easy in a manner. Insolvency in bankruptcy code की बात करो, so it has faster resolution of non-performing assets, improving your investors' confidence also. RERA की बात करूँ अगर तो that is your real estate regulation act. It has cleaned up the real estate sector. Digital infrastructure की बात करो, so it includes your UID, which is your Aadhaar, your UPI and your DBT, that is your direct benefit transfer. Now if I talk about MSME, तो उसको भी strengthen करने की बात करी गई है by providing it growth, employment, innovation. ठीक है. And it should make sure that the burden prevents firms from growing and entering into the formal supply chains. Similarly, you can see about the policy actions taken that PAN 2.0 is there, जिसमें हमने paperless process के बारे में बात करी थी. जन विश्वास Act 2023 was there, जिसमें हमने बात करी थी कि हम decriminalize करेंगे 183 provisions across the 42 Central Act of Ease of Doing Business. Similarly, we have Joint Parliamentary Committee commends Jan Vishwas 2.0 for further deregulations as well. Now, structural reforms for the future growth. So you can see जो हमारा economic survey 2024 ने क्या suggest सजेस्ट करा था कि हमें मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर में बूस्ट करना है, स्किल डेवलपमेंट में बूस्ट लाना है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट चाहिए, एमएसएमई ग्रोथ की जो स्ट्रैटेजी है उसमें हमें मिडिल स्टैंड चाहिए, दैट इज मीन कि हमें जो एक्सपैंड करना है किसको, मिड साइज जो कंपनीज है उनको एक्सपेंशन चाहिए। एग्रीकल्चरल रिफॉर्म्स हम अलग अलग लेकर आए हैं, कैपिटल ग्रीन कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट इज ऑल्सो नीडेड, सिमिलरली वी हैव ब्रिजिंग एजुकेशन एंड योर स्टेट capacity building as well. Now deregulation and its economic freedom. So अगर हम deregulation करेंगे ना चीज़ों की, so it means कि जो हमारा licensing है वो reduce होगी, हमारी participation ज़्यादा increase होगी, investment ज़्यादा increase होगी, and you will see that there is an improvement in our sectors also. So key to success, reduction in the licensing and inspection, allow individual and enterprises to operate freely, learn from the best practices that is there. Now you're reinvigorating internal growth, enhancing your economic freedom through the deregulation. So changing global economic landscape. So traditional policy जो tools that once drove the global growth, they may not be not be longer be effective. If I talk about today, we need something else to be there so that we can bring improvement here. India की जो strategy है that is domestic led growth. अब India जो है it must grow at 8% annually, और अगर मैं investment की बात करूँ so it must rise to 35% of GDP, and we have taken lessons from East Asia countries like Japan है, China है, they have achieved rapid growth through high investment rates only. So that is what we are also integrating in our economy. Now what is the shift? Investment efficiency over the investment rate. So अब focus क्या है? It should not be just on increasing your investment but also enhancing investment efficiency. Investment efficiency क्या है कि अगर हमारा जो output generation है, if it goes faster, that means we have to integrate it with the higher output per investment unit as well. Now we need proper reassessment also, we need to take proper check on it. Now there is a role of deregulation in our economic growth. So deregulating your economic burdens, assessing and minimizing the true cost of your regulation to business. Systematic deregulation is needed, and enhancement of the economic freedom is also what is needed here. Now what can be the way forward? Policy actions for growth. So focus on more domestic levers. ठीक है, ensure that you are getting more of your investment, you are focused on the faster projection, your faster project execution. Deregulation and the policy reforms create a business friendly environment here. Now deregulation and economic freedom, a catalyst for growth. Deregulation क्या है? It is key for the MSME growth as well. Now deregulation के बारे में अगर मैं आपको बता चुकी हूँ कि जितना deregulation, जितनी गवर्नमेंट की इन्वॉल्वमेंट कम होगी, उतना ही ज्यादा हमें जो इन्वेस्टमेंट है हमारे पर्टिकुलर सेक्टर में देखने को मिलेगी. Now what are the key initiatives for the deregulation? So you can see that government union government reforms are there, that simplifying the taxation laws, rationalize your labor deregulation, decriminalize your businesses laws. Similarly state government के efforts की अगर बात करूँ, so states of Haryana and Tamil Nadu amended building regulation 12 times in the last decade. Punjab ने क्या करा है? Liberalize building, labor, fire regulation after the industry concentration. And similarly if I talk about Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Haryana ने क्या करा है? It has relaxed night shift restrictions for women in ITs. Similarly जो उत्तर प्रदेश है, it has relaxed building norms for hotels. Now these are very very important steps for you. अगर कल को क्वेश्चन आता है पेपर में, so you can easily answer it. Economic impact of deregulation क्या है? Business reform action plan shows a positive correlation between ease of doing business and your industrial activity. International evidence क्या suggest करते हैं कि जो हमारा consumer welfare है, it should increase, enhance, and the competition should be there, and higher economic growth should also be there. Now what are the challenges that are posed by over regulation? So increase in the operational cost. अगर हमारी जो जो हमारा रेगुलेशन है वो ओवर होगी तो ऑफ कोर्स हमारा जो इंक्रीज है, हमारा जो कॉस्ट में इंक्रीज है वो हमें देखने को मिलेगा. ठीक है. नाउ 3 स्टेप फ्रेमवर्क फॉर द सिस्टमैटिक डीरेगुलेशन. सबसे पहले आइडेंटिफाई एरियाज फॉर रिफॉर्म्स. ठीक है. नाउ द शिफ्ट और द फोकस ऑन रिमूविंग योर स्ट्रक्चरल इनएफिशिएंसीज शुड बी देयर. एंड व्हाट आर द लर्निंग्स फ्रॉम द अदर स्टेट्स एंड कंट्रीज इज दैट आंध्र प्रदेश, कर्नाटका, हरियाणा ने क्या करा है? शिफ्ट करा है परमिशन, शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम परमिशन बेस्ड टू कंडीशन बेस्ड नाइट शिफ्ट एग्जेम्पशंस. जापान ने क्या करा है? It has allowed mixed use urban developments, Korea averages working hours over 6 months. Similarly if I talk about some states of US, so it has reduced construction approval steps. Cost benefit analysis of regulation की बात करो, setback norms cost Indian factories up to 97.5 lakh per 10,000 of square meter plot. Now strip forest classification delays passageway approvals by over 250 days here. Now key deregulation strategies for your future reforms. So liberalizing your standard controls is there, ठीक है, setting your legal safeguards is there. अगर आप tariffs वगैरह को reduce करोगे, so you can see the improvement here. Applying your risk-based deregulation, that is also very important. And what is the way forward now? Now regulations must be the minimum necessary to achieve the objectives while ensuring a business growth. Now it states that liberalization, जो हमारे जो industrial norms हैं, it should be liberalized. Improvement in the enforcement safeguard should also be there. It should reduce compliance cost via rationalizing your tariffs and risk-based regulation. Deregulation is crucial for India's aspiration to become a $1 trillion economy. Now we'll talk about the renewed paradigm for medium-term growth, the case for systematic deregulation. Now what is the importance of deregulation? First, सबसे पहले तो हमारी improvement यहाँ पे देखने को मिलेगी हर एक sector में, that is important. Now step by step approach कि सबसे पहले identify करो regulation को, compare करो it with other states and have an assess of the economic impact as well. Now global momentum of if I talk about global momentum for economic freedoms, you can see जो over regulation है, it stifles innovation, your competition and increases your cost. Similarly deregulation की बात करूँ, so it enables business to be efficient, cost effective and your innovation. Systematic deregulation, जो हमारा deregulation है वो क्या करता है, it is as critical as infrastructure investment is. Now middle stand, जो हमारी middle companies हैं या फिर जो हमारी middle group companies हैं, जो एक lesson हमें मिला है global economies से, जो हमारी Germany, Switzerland, Japan, Singapore है, they have successfully leveraged your middle stand, your SME sector for growth. ठीक है, they can be helped with the you can provide them help in the weather economic shocks, boost in the infrastructure, boost in the manufacturing, attract your long term investment, encourage your sustainability, employment and the sensitive growth. Employment generation की अगर मैं बात करूँ, so large firm prioritize your capital intensive growth. ठीक है, similarly if I talk about the states, they should specially facilitate your SME growth through the deregulatory reforms to create a business friendly environment. Now global examples अगर मैं दूँ तो you can consider the example that we have already taken. ठीक है, यहाँ पे कुछ examples हैं, you can see them, what rest I have already discussed with you. Now if I talk about the urgency in the global current global context, so challenges such as export constraint, environmental concerns, energy crisis demand, that is urgent deregulation is necessary here. जो domestic growth है, that levers must be strengthened through the regulatory flexibility. Without deregulation other policy initiatives will not be effective here. ठीक है, नाउ ब्रॉडर इम्पैक्ट ऑफ डीरेगुलेशन क्या है कि सबसे पहले आपकी गवर्नेंस अच्छी होगी, इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी, ठीक है, यू विल हैव बटरफ्लाई इफेक्ट, दैट मीन्स स्मॉल एक्ट्स ऑफ डीरेगुलेशन कैन लीड टू लार्ज स्केल एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, बिजनेस एंड योर इन्वेस्टमेंट एज वेल. दैट इज द रीजन योर बटरफ्लाई इफेक्ट जो है इसको याद रखना कि इनपुट इज लेस एंड आउटपुट इज मोर. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट यू हैव क्वेश्चन हियर, सो यू हैव अ क्वेश्चन इन फ्रंट ऑफ योर स्क्रीन about A of the world's wind installed capacity is sourced from B. B also houses nearly C of the world's battery manufacturing capacity, pivotal to the energy transition. In 2022 alone, B allocated USD towards various investments in solar and wind energy, electric vehicles and battery technologies vis-a-vis US and EU investment in these sectors, which amount to USD E in the same year. Now I'll give you question, it is your responsibility to answer that. ठीक है, क्योंकि हर एक वीडियो में मैं ही आंसर कर देती हूँ. अब ये आपकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि मैंने इंटायर चैप्टर आपके साथ डिस्कस कर लिया है. अगर किसी को पूरे सर्वे से आइडिया हो गया होगा तो उसको आंसर का भी पता लग गया होगा, बट अदरवाइज यू पीपल हैव टू आंसर दैट. ठीक है, यू पीपल हैव टू आंसर दैट, यू पीपल हैव टू आंसर द अमाउंट एंड यू पीपल हैव टू टेल मी द कंट्री एज वेल, जिसके बारे में हम एनर्जी के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. वी आर टॉकिंग हियर अबाउट द कंट्री हु इज वेरी रिच इन एनर्जी एंड रेस्ट ऑफ द सेक्टर्स, जहाँ पे उसने डोमिनेंस क्रिएट करके रखी है. सो समझदार जिसने ये करा है, जिसने प्रॉपर वीडियो देख ली, उसको आंसर ऑलरेडी आ गया होगा. रेस्ट हु हैव प्रॉब्लम इज योर ऑब्लिगेशन टू सी द एंटायर योर सर्वे, बिकॉज रीड करना तो उसको आपके लिए भी इंपॉर्टेंट है ना. हम तो है, मैंने तो डिकोड कर दिया सारा है ना, मैंने शॉर्ट में सब कुछ डिकोड कर दिया कि कॉन्सेप्ट्स क्या क्या रिलेटेड है, बट उसको रीड करना इज योर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. नाउ ए स्टैंड्स फॉर व्हाट? इज इट 30%, 55%, 60%, 100% या फिर 20%? सो यू पीपल हैव टू आंसर दैट इन द कमेंट सेक्शन के मैम जो एग्जैक्ट आंसर है वो क्या है. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन यू हैव टू टेल व्हाट बी स्टैंड्स फॉर. इज इट ऑस्ट्रेलिया, इंडिया, चाइना, न्यूजीलैंड या फिर रशिया? ठीक है, इसका भी आंसर मुझे आप लोग दोगे. नेक्स्ट इज योर सी स्टैंड्स फॉर व्हाट? 80%, 30%, 20%, 55% या फिर 70%. एंड You have next question. D stands for what? Is it USD $300 billion, USD $546 billion, $745 billion, $800 billion, या फिर $250 billion? So you people have to tell me that what is the exact answer here. ठीक है? And next we have, last we have is D. Last we have is what E stands for. Is it $260 billion, $645 billion, $321 billion, $8 million, $8 billion, या फिर $127 billion? So you have 5 questions in front of you. You people have to read one paragraph out of it. You first have to think कि यहाँ पे जो हमने broader topics लिए थे, broader जो हमने headings ली थी, उनमें से किस में से question ये पूछा गया है, and then you have to answer these questions, and then you have to write it in the comment section कि मैम ये जो है ये आंसर है. ठीक है? So all right, we are done with the chapter 5 as well. We have completed our chapter 5. In the coming lecture we'll see the rest of the chapters. So next video में हम ऐसे ही with data we'll see chapter 6, and we'll try to decode it and the key concepts that are related to it, and we'll come up with a question also so that you people can revise well. So thank you so much for being with me. I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, take care, keep revising. Thank you.